Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, we'll hear from a national advocate for nonpartisan voting. Also tonight, the city of Phoenix gets a grant to clean up contaminated properties, and we'll look at an optimistic and technically grounded vision of the future. Those stories next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. A national political reform network is traveling around the country pushing the concept of nonpartisan elections. Joining us now is Jacqueline Salet, president of IndependentVoting.org, which is in Phoenix for 2 days of strategy meetings. Good to have you back on the show.
Oh, well, thanks for having me.
IndependentVoting.org. First of all, what is that?
We're a national organization that represents independent voters all around the country. We have affiliates in over 40 states, and we represent the 42% of the electorate today who are independents.
Is this an anti-party group, or is it a pro-independent group?
It's a pro-independent group, but it's a group of Americans who believe that the parties have too much power and that they have overstepped their bounds in many ways, and that we need to take steps to make the political system less partisan and more inclusive and more developmental, more democratic.
Steps such as?
Well, for example, the issue of primary voting is a very, very big one in the country today. Half the states prohibit independents from voting in primaries. Other states allow independents to participate in altered or limited kinds of ways. And when you have a situation where so many people are saying, I don't want to be in a political party, I don't want to vote for the party, I want to vote for the candidate, I want to be free to choose and move all over the political field to pick what I think is the best person to represent me and my community and so forth. You're talking about having to make some serious systemic and structural changes in the way the primary process is conducted, but really in the way the whole political process is organized.
Indeed, and we talk about independent voters as well. Independent, the biggest voting bloc in Arizona.
Yes.
Is now the independent voter.
Exactly, yeah.
Is that a good thing? Because some will tell you Arizona has never been more partisan.
Well, I think those two things go together in the following sense, which is that more and more people are leaving the parties. Young people who are coming of age are not registering into the parties. They're becoming independents because they just don't like that partisan culture. In Arizona, and this is one of the reasons why I'm here, as you mentioned in your introduction, is that I'm working with a coalition of folks in the state who are looking to give voters an option in 2016 to choose a nonpartisan system of elections. Arizona has that at the municipal level in almost every city throughout the state, but it really is reaching, I think, something of a crisis relative to state politics and national politics, and we have to do something to make the system more open.
Arizona voters were given that option in the past a few years ago, and it was overwhelmingly defeated. What do you make of that?
I think it was the first time out. I think that the issue was really just coming onto the table at that point. And I think the parties came out so strongly and just beat that thing down and scared voters away from the idea of systemic change. It's going to be 4 years later, and frankly, I think the idea of systemic change is not scary anymore. I think people feel that it's necessary. And so I think that the next time this issue comes around, and we have wonderful people who were involved in this. Paul Johnson, the former mayor of Phoenix, of course, is a critical person in this, but there's a broad coalition from the business sector, from communities, from the Latino community, from many, many different constituencies and communities who don't ordinarily come together, but they recognize that we're in something of a political crisis and we need to act.
There are those who say, though, that the open primary system and the open election system just locks in place those who have the power. If it's a Republican state, you're never going to get the charismatic Democrat. If it's a Democratic state, the Republican with the good ideas can never break through that top two. How do you respond to that?
Look, I think that if you had a nonpartisan top two system in this state, you would start to see new coalitions forming, and you would start to see a change in the culture. We see this now in states that have the top two system. But look, Ted, I think there's a very fundamental issue here, and let me see if I can push back a little bit on your premise. The principle that's operative here is that no voter should be required to join a political organization as a condition for participating in the political process. See, the whole question of voting rights is being redefined now by the American people. And so, for example, I'm sure you saw that Hillary Clinton gave a big talk on voting rights last week in Texas. And she delineated a set of things that she thought needed to happen. Automatic voter registration, yes. Restore Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, yes. 20 days of early voting, yes. But what was interesting and I think revealing is that she didn't say one word about the fact that 42% of the country today are independents. And we face barriers that are some of the most profound voter suppression issues that are going on in the country today.
Indeed, and we see that as far as some of the primary voting here, and the candidates especially is what you see a major factor here as far as getting enough signatures and those sorts of things. But back to the independent voter.
Yes.
Arizona has, again, the #1 voting bloc, and yet you will hear time after time from political scientists and pollsters, they are the single most apathetic and least engaged bloc of voters out there. How do you change? I mean, the turnout was, I think, under 10%. It's consistently under 10%.
Yeah, I don't agree that they're apathetic. I think they're making a statement about what they believe in and what they stand for. See, if you say to independents, well, we have a partisan system here, and now you should vote and you should participate in it, it's a little bit like saying to someone who's allergic to peanuts, come over here and have a peanut butter sandwich. I mean, people became independents because they really don't like the culture of the parties. And so even if you do what happened here in Arizona, which is that the voters enacted an open primary system, that in and of itself doesn't change the political culture. That's why I think, for example, to go back to the Hillary Clinton situation, I frankly think it's a form of voter fraud, even though she's polemicizing against the Republicans for making that the voter fraud issue an issue when she doesn't think it is. But if you're going to talk about voter rights, but you're not going to talk about the rights of independent voters, frankly, I think you're committing a form of voter fraud. We have to demand that the presidential candidates address this issue. This is too big to ignore. It's too big to sweep it under the rug.
But can you address it better and have more of a voice and get more action if you get more of those independents to the polls? That's how you change things.
But you have to change what it means to go to the polls, because the independents have left the party system in terms of their registration and how they define themselves, because they're saying, look, we don't like the way parties are operating. We don't want to be categorized ideologically speaking. We don't want elected officials who are more loyal to the party than they are to the people who elected them. They're demanding by the act of becoming an independent that the culture change. And I think now the issue is, well, how are we going to re-engineer the political process to be responsive to that?
All right. Good to have you back here. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Ted.
Tonight's edition of Arizona Sustainability looks at the Environmental Protection Agency's awarding of $1.2 million in brownfield grants to 3 Arizona communities. The funding includes $400,000 to the City of Phoenix for targeted industrial areas. Roseanne Albright manages the Phoenix Brownfields program. She joins us now. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
Let's start by defining terms here. What is a brownfield?
A brownfield is a piece of property that is being overlooked for development because of the perception of or actual presence of hazardous substances or sometimes petroleum products in the soil or groundwater.
You mentioned perception of. Explain that, please.
You know, sometimes you might be driving along in the city and you see a piece of vacant land. Maybe it's been vacant forever. Maybe you remember years ago it used to be a gas station and you wonder, you know, what happened to that gas station and those tanks? Sometimes people think there is contamination and so they avoid those properties. And all it takes is some investigation to figure out maybe there is no problem on the site after all.
Interesting. As far as contaminants are concerned, are there certain types of contaminants, real or perceived?
You know, when you're looking at contaminants, it runs the gamut from contamination that may come from old dry cleaning facilities, from industrial operations, even old metal salvage facilities, could be gas stations, even could be things like a landfill.
And as far as the EPA, this grant program that the EPA is involved in, the City of Phoenix now gets $400,000. What's that all about?
This particular grant, we are focusing on what we're calling brownfields to health fields. So what we're doing is we're using the opportunity to find brownfields properties, get them cleaned up and redeveloped for uses that will improve public health, for things like healthcare facilities, clinics, mobile or permanent, community gardens, urban farms, food co-ops, food hubs, all of those kinds of things that are going to help improve access to healthy food and health care. And
we should mention again that 3 Arizona communities received the grants. Phoenix obviously one of the 3. Now how many different areas in the City of Phoenix are targeted?
You know, for this particular grant, we're doing a couple of things. One is we're doing a citywide inventory to determine how many brownfields are throughout. And then for the health fields portion, we're going to be targeting about 11 different areas focused on what we call neighborhood initiative areas, areas like Garfield area, Sunny Slope. We're looking at redevelopment areas like the Rio Salado beyond the Banks area, South Phoenix, West Phoenix, areas where there have been lots of industrial uses, but also they are also plagued with food deserts, lack of access to healthy food, and they also don't have medical care, so they're medically underserved as well.
The Garfield and Sunny Slope, the first 2 you mentioned there, those are mostly known as neighborhoods. Talk to us about the idea of a brownfield being with, how is it as focused as an intersection, a corner? Could it be a few square miles? What are we talking about here?
You know, as we're going to identify these properties, it could be everything from a small 1-acre lot on a corner. It could be something as large as a former industrial facility. So that's the purpose of us trying to do our inventory first. And we're focusing on those areas because, as you know, the city is huge, so we've got to focus on areas where there is the most need.
And the Rio Salado sounds very interesting because down there at the river bottom, a lot has been done already down there. If anyone hasn't been there in a while, I mean, the hiking and the natural feel of the area has returned. What else needs to be done?
You know, we completed the Rio Salado Habitat Restoration Project and all the great things that you just mentioned. But along the banks of the river, there are still a lot of vacant properties, some of which were landfills, some of which were industrial operations that we still need to identify, clean up, and redevelop. So there's still a lot of work to be done.
So assessment, cleaning up the property, and then finding out what kind of redevelopment can occur?
Yes, you know, part of this grant is to identify the sites, do some environmental investigation, prioritize the sites, work with the community to identify what kind of needs they would like to see in their community, and of course reach out to the private sector to bring them in as well.
Is that what the EPA, when they initially start this grant or put out the proposal, is that what they're looking for? Something, I know, you know, brownfields to health fields, that's sort of an idea for Phoenix, but what in general are they looking for?
In general, the EPA program is looking for opportunities basically to really clean up these environmentally environmentally contaminated sites and put them back into use. Traditionally, we've been looking at redeveloping for commercial, retail, housing uses, and our own Phoenix program, we will continue to do that as well. So this is just an added benefit where we're more focused on the health portion of it.
And as far as the grant proposal and what you guys wrote, obviously you were awarded with the $400,000. Yeah. Who was involved in the process from the beginning?
You know, we are very fortunate in that we have several partners that helped us put this grant together. It's a group from St. Luke's Health Initiatives, the Maricopa County Department of Health, Arizona Department of Health, International Rescue Committee, who has quite a few community gardens, Keep Phoenix Beautiful, who runs Phoenix Renews. We even brought in students from Arizona State University and also the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension. So it's a whole great group of stakeholders.
And that was obviously getting the proposal going, getting the grant going. Now you've got the money, you've got the ability to move forward. Give us a timetable of what's going to occur.
It's a 3-year grant, and so our first step, we get the money in October, is to complete our inventory. Using our own City of Phoenix funds, we've started the inventory, and at first blush, we've got about 7,000 properties that potentially could have some environmental issues. So we'll whittle those down through a prioritization process to, I hope, a manageable number. And then we'll reach out to the community in these designated areas to let them know what Brownfields is all about, what this project is about, and then start to identify more specific sites and uses.
So in 3 years the construction starts, or in 3 years we should see construction already going?
In 3 years, I hope that we have a solid list of properties that have been cleaned up and are ready for development.
All right, Roseanne Albright from the City of Phoenix. Good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Project Hieroglyph is an effort by ASU's Center for Science and the Imagination to team engineers and scholars with science fiction writers to inspire a more optimistic and inspiring look at the future. Ed Finn is director of the Center for Science and the Imagination. He joins us now. Good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
We've had a lot of science fiction folks on the air here recently, a lot of future visions. Most of these future visions, a little dark, a little bleak, a little dystopian. I know you've got this new anthology out, which we're going to talk about in a second here, but are you different?
Yes, though I think we all need hope. We all need optimism. It's fuel for anything that we want to do. You're never going to make it in the world if you don't have some fundamental belief that we can make things better. But for some reason, many of the stories that we tell ourselves about the future are incredibly bleak. I guess that sells movie tickets, and it's exciting, it makes for good explosions, but it doesn't really help us plan for the world that we're actually going to live in.
Why do you think that? I mean, what happened to Buck Rogers and Captain Kirk and all the guys who went boldly where no man's ever gone before?
That was really one of the inspirational sources for the project, is how can we get back to that sense of optimism without necessarily buying into all the other stuff that came along with science fiction in the 50s and the 60s. If you ever go back and watch the Jetsons, the future still looks like the future, but the gender politics do not. And so we do want to capture that spirit, though. I think that it's a complicated answer for why we've lost that feeling. It's about the transition from the Kennedy years and the Apollo missions to the kinds of relationships we have with politics and culture more broadly today. But fundamentally, it's a world that we need to get back to.
So Project Hieroglyph, what's that all about?
So this is our effort to change things. And this started out as a conversation that one of our writers had, the founder of the project, Neal Stephenson, with ASU's president, Michael Crow. And Stephenson was making this claim, we've lost our ambition to do big stuff. He grew up with watching the Apollo missions, the landings on the moon, these grand national infrastructure projects. And now, as Peter Thiel puts it, we were promised jetpacks and we got 140 characters. We're spending lots of money and we're putting our brightest minds on these problems, on big problems, but they're problems in technology and in the social networking universe or in selling better ads. And we're not thinking about the fundamental challenges that face the human race.
So the Project Hieroglyph gets what? Scholars, artists, scientists, engineers all together to collaborate?
So this is our response to the problem. The project is about coming up with tangible futures that are not Buck Rogers' distant galaxy far, far away futures. That are stuff that we could do right now. So that's why we wanted to pair up great storytellers with scientists and engineers. So the remit for the project is come up with a story that a young scientist, engineer, or entrepreneur could read about today and achieve within her or his professional lifetime. So the near future.
Yeah, because we've heard how so many NASA engineers were raised watching Star Trek and said, that's what I want to do.
And you know what? They're still watching Star Trek because we don't have anything else, right? We're still living in the future. The Star Trek future, the Tomorrowland future just seems to be still out there. It's like it's getting farther away.
But in reality, it is. I remember when we landed on the moon, everyone thought we're going to be in Mars in 10 years. We're going to be out of the solar system in 20. Everyone thought things were going to move in leaps and bounds. They didn't. That's got to be a factor.
Absolutely. Progress is hard, but it's not that when you look at, for example, the funding of NASA from the 60s to today, you can see why we haven't made that progress. It's not that it's impossible. These are all technically solvable challenges, as I'm sure any of our friends from NASA would be the first to tell you. It's about where we put our priorities and our resources. And fundamentally, it's about the stories that we tell, the stories that we believe in. And that's what we need to change.
And the stories in this anthology, again, this is the paperback version of the anthology coming out, reignites the golden age of science fiction. Our friend Lawrence Krauss, I believe, is included in the book as well. Give us some other examples of what people, because these are, again, these are stories, but they're stories that aren't necessarily of the apocalypse.
They're not of the apocalypse, but they're also not all bubblegum and happiness. When we talk about utopia, that's not really what this book is about. This is about thoughtful optimism. It's about a world that's hopefully better in some fundamental ways, but it's not an absurd and a pipe dream. So one of the pioneers, the guinea pigs really for this project was Stephenson himself. So he came to a structural engineer at ASU and he had this very simple question: how tall could we build something? And Keith Jelmstadt, who's this wonderful guy, a professor at ASU, said, well, I've been a structural engineer for 20 years and nobody's ever asked me that question, because that's not how engineers approach their work. That's not how you teach structural engineering. And when you start taking that question seriously, it's something that, as Keith said, it lit up his students, it lit up his colleagues, and it wasn't a problem you could solve by turning to chapter 2 of the textbook, which Keith wrote, by the way, and answering a set of questions. It takes creative thinking, it takes imagination, and it takes people from multiple disciplines and backgrounds. So they came up with this idea of the tall tower, 20 kilometers tall, making space an elevator ride away. And one of the provocative things Neal Stephenson did with the stories, he didn't determine what you would use the tower for. If you think about it, it's such a gigantic thing, it would be such an enterprise, why not leave that open and leave that to the reader's imagination? He gave some hints, but to leave that open. So that's one of my favorites.
Well, indeed, again, you have a science fiction writer, or at least someone who wants to write science fiction, going to an engineer or a scientist or a psychologist or anyone, any kind of a scholar, and saying, here's what I want to do, and you got to make the story technically grounded. So there has to be, this isn't just complete futuristic fantasy.
Yeah, and that was a really interesting challenge for everybody involved. So this is, I should really make sure to explain, this is an experiment. And this is not something that was intended to be a final proof for our idea. This is really an invitation to everybody, and I hope watchers of this program as well, to come participate and get involved. When we published the book, we want to make sure that We said this is not a dead tree commemorating a thing that's over, a party that you've missed. This is an invitation. This is a thing that's just getting started. And so these collaborations happen in a lot of different ways. The writers, the scientists, engineers, and other people all had to take some risks. The writers we didn't let them just go off and write a story in secret and then show it to us later, which is how writers prefer to do it usually. We said, come with your ideas, share work in progress, and we asked our scientific and other technical collaborators to do the same, to talk about things that are not totally vetted and safe, to talk about speculative ideas that are right around the corner, but that they probably wouldn't be talking about in a peer-reviewed journal.
Well, I tell you what, it sounds like there's enough emphasis on optimism, at least on ambition and inspiration. It sounds like good stuff. Thank you so much for joining us. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Wednesday on Arizona Horizon, we will speak with a state lawmaker who wants more focus on the parents of children suspected of being abused. And we'll hear about early career scientists and engineers awarded money to conduct research. It's at 5:30 and 10 on the next Arizona Horizon. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.